A size 22 parachute Adams strikes fear in the hearts of fly tyers, both novice and advanced. But fear not, with a few little tricks and a good bit of practice, you'll be tying them with confidence in no time. For a hook, I'm especially fond of a Dairiki number 320 in yes, size 22. I really like the look of the uniform gap. Start by getting the hook firmly secured in the jaws of your tying vise. Midge jaws work great if you have them. For thread, it's hard to beat something like Viva's 16-aught. It's strong, grippy, and has a ridiculously small diameter. Get your thread started on the hook shank, leaving an eye-length space behind the eye, then take a few wraps rearward before snipping off the tag. For the tail, I'm going to cheat a little and use Coq de Leon fibers rather than a mix of brown and grizzly hackle. Pull down 6 to 8 fibers so they're perpendicular to the stem, and while keeping their tips aligned, strip them free. The tips should be fine, straight, and reasonably well marked. Measure to form a tail a hook shank in length, then transfer that measurement rearward to the start of the bend. Begin securing the fibers to the top of the hook shank with 2 or 3 wraps of tying thread. Check to make sure the tail is the correct length, and if necessary, make adjustments by carefully pulling the fibers underneath the thread wraps. When you're satisfied with the tail length, continue taking wraps of tying thread to bind the fibers down to the top of the hook shank all the way back to the start of the bend. Lift the butt ends of the fibers up and snip them off close. Then, return your tying thread forward to about 1/3 of the way down the hook shank. For the wing post, snip a card width segment of white polypropylene yarn free. Separate the segment into 2 equal halves. This will be enough to make 2 flies. Holding one of the halves, strip out any wayward, overly curvy fibers to thin the clump a bit. Give your bobbin a good counterclockwise spin, so when you lay the Poly Pro on top of the hook shank and take a wrap, that wrap will be right at the tie-in point as opposed to forward of it. Continue taking thread wraps rearward to make sure the material is bound down really well. Then, while lifting the butt ends up, snip them off at a shallow angle. Keep taking thread wraps down this little ramp to anchor the butts, then back forward to what will be the base of the wing post. Pull the fibers back, checking to make sure the post will be located 1/3 of the way down the hook shank. Place a small drop of UV Cure resin on a notepad or scrap piece of paper, then turn your UV torch on and have it at the ready. With a fine bodkin or sewing needle, pick up just the teeniest amount of the UV resin. Place the resin at the base of the wing post and work it in a bit. While holding the post in a vertical position, give it a little twist to further work in the resin. Pick up your UV torch and give the base of the post a healthy bath of UV light. When you release the polypropylene, you should be left with a short, stiff, vertical post, perfect for hackle wrapping. For the body of the fly, I'm going to use Adams Gray beaver dubbing. Pull only a small amount free from the packet. It's tremendously easy to overdub here. Create just the thinnest of noodles on your tying thread. Take wraps with the noodle so the dubbing starts right at the base of the tail. Then take touching wraps forward, hopefully ending right at the base of the post. Position your tying thread immediately in front of the post. For hackle, I prefer saddle hackle as opposed to standard neck hackle, mainly because you can produce so many flies from a single feather. A mix of brown and grizzly are traditional on an Adams, so I'm going to use both. Before plucking a feather free, measure to make sure the barbules are the correct length, here size 22. Don't sweat the size too much with a parachute style fly. A little over or under will work just fine. Using 2 full-length feathers, it's possible to produce nearly a dozen flies. At the butt end of the grizzly, strip off an 1/8 inch or so of fibers from the stem. With the shiny side of the feather facing up, lay the bare stem against the near side of the hook and take thread wraps to secure it. Then, repeat the same procedure with the brown hackle feather. You want to be absolutely sure both feathers are really well anchored before moving on to the next step, as having one pull free is no fun at all. Go back to your packet of beaver dubbing, and this time take an even smaller amount to create a dubbing noodle on your tying thread that's super thin and only about a ½ inch in length. Take wraps with the noodle to fill in the space between the post and the back edge of the hook eye. When you're done, complete a 4 or 5 turn whip finish, seat the knot well, and snip or cut your tying thread free. Once again, squeeze out a tiny drop of UV Cure resin and get the UV torch switched on so you don't have to do it later when your hands are full. Get hold of both hackle feathers and at the same time start taking clockwise wraps with them around the post. On a fly this small, you only need 2 full wraps. While holding the hackle feathers taut with your left hand, again use a fine-tipped bodkin to pick up a small drop of resin. Apply the drop to the 2 hackle stems where they contact the post on the near side of the hook. Go easy with the amount of resin, but make sure it's worked in well. Then put your bodkin down and pick up the UV torch. Make sure to really bathe the area with UV light. Once the resin's cured, you can release the hackle feathers as they should be firmly affixed to the wing post. One at a time, lift the feathers up and snip them off as close as possible, trying not to snip other hackle fibers in the process. Finally, trim the post to length. I prefer to keep it fairly short so the fly doesn't get too top-heavy. I especially like this posting and wrapping technique because it leaves a very clean, good-looking underside to the fly, and a hook eye that's clear and easily accessible. See, nothing to be scared of.